Faster, like about 20 minutes ago.
We're live. So the magic is on.
Oh,
Tim, good to see you. I'm seeing all the folks in the chat. Kill the Planet 619, Jeff USMC, a little Marine Corps action. Cool. I like my Marines. Well, Dave and Sophie. I think it's just us. We may see Neil come on. I'm gonna leave a spot open for him. Otherwise, the way it cuts it into three just makes it look not so fun.
So I can see the background.
Yeah, so we have a phantom guest.
We do have a phantom guest. Maybe I'll speak for them as well. Do some voice ring. Okay, so we got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but Dave, let's start off with any kind of Helium analytics stuff that you've seen over the past week or two, because I think we missed some stuff last week.
Yeah, we missed some stuff last week because I was on vacation and then preparing to go to Helium House, so I didn't get much chance to get some stuff together. I've just got home, and the first thing I did before saying hello to my wife was to get all the analytics stuff. I've tweeted all the stats from the last couple of weeks. So what I've seen is that we've had a fairly consistent witness count per day over the last 12 days. We're running something like 425,000 to 450,000 hotspots witnessing per day, which it's reasonable. It's about where it was before light hotspots. However, beacons is still a whole other story. We're down at 160, 170,000 per day, which is causing people grief still. You're not likely to get a beacon sort of until every third day, or maybe every fourth day if you're lucky. So those beacons are really down now. In theory, it shouldn't matter that we've got less beacons. The reward should average out, but I think, as we've seen, maybe not so much. And people like to see that regular heartbeat. So I tagged 𝗚𝗵𝘁 in my tweets this afternoon just to point out. I'm sure he knows that the beacons are still down. We've also got the issue that rewards are still all over the place. So we're down in the low to mid 40,000 HNT per day. Should be 50,000, although yesterday it did pop up to 52, showing that balancing is trying to work. But over the last 12 days, it's been consistently below 50,000. So people will see less rewards, and there'll be more screaming. So that's not ideal. However, what I did do, I'll just get my notes here that I did. I looked at the last 7 days, just to show what we're talking about when we say, okay, looking at the last 24 hours is probably not a great thing with the beacon frequency so low. So over the last 7 days, we've had 515,000 unique hotspots have beaconed. And 572,000 have witnessed.
Okay.
So over a 7-day period, it looks better. And then I did over 12 days as well, and the numbers get closer together. You get 575,000 beacons and 594,000 witnesses. So the number of hotspots participating in beaconing and witnessing over that long period of time is coming together. I guess if I went a little bit further back, we'd peak out at around 610,000 over maybe 14, 15 days, but the ETL kicked me out after 12 days. So,
okay.
So I think it shows that over that longer period, people are participating in proof of coverage, but you know, the reward structure, I think, is perhaps not working as well as it should in averaging out per hotspot over that period. Some may be beaconing more frequently.
What would the expectation be, Dave, if we're kind of looking at this from a numbers game? Is that enough time to say everybody is doing okay? 7 days, or would you really want more time, or is there's not enough data?
I think what we're saying is that over 7 days, it's showing that the vast majority of the network is participating in proof of coverage.
Okay.
Previously, we were getting 3 or 4 beacons per day, so it was a lot easier to look at that sort of in a much shorter time frame. But now we're having to look at that longer time frame. What I haven't done yet is looked at how individual rewards are affected by that, because as I said, I think what we're going to be into is where, although 600,000 hotspots have beaconed in the last 12 days, we may well find that 100,000 of them have beaconed a lot, and 500,000 of them have beaconed not so much.
Right.
So it's looking at that distribution that is the next step.
Dig it. What about, I'm seeing Robert Print 3D Druck. What about hotspots which are affected by testnet? I don't know that I understand that question, but I'm sure you do.
Yeah. So I think 𝗱𝗀𝗀𝗀 released an announcement a few days ago that some of the hotspots were flatlining because they were connected to testnet and mainnet, and they've fixed the bug on that. But she did mention that it could be 7 days before that sort of comes into effect. So we're going to be looking at next week's shows before that might fix people.
Okay. Cool, Siegfried. Hopefully the volume now is a little bit better. I mean, what I'm hearing, Dave, in like the big picture is there's actually nothing really wrong with the network. It's just going through like the final phases of the transition to light hotspots. Maybe it's a little bit down. Rewards aren't as great as we'd like, but overall, we're not seeing any like giant problems. Does that seem pretty reasonable?
I think that's reasonable. So I think it's working. It's just different from how it was before, and it'll take a bit of getting used to. A bit like last year when we all suffered every time there was a GA.
Yep.
Everything went off. Well, everything went off for 2 days, basically, all around the world every time it happened. So that got better. This will get better. It'll just take time.
Okay, dig it. Thanks, Doug.
No problem.
Sophie, are you ready? Hopefully.
Sure.
So for those of you who don't know, Sophie, give us an idea of who you are and what you do, and then we'll dig into that.
Okay. My name is Sophi K. I am a part-time employee at the Helium Foundation, and I am a voting member of the Manufacturing Compliance Committee. And I can just lead right into what the committee does. The committee hopes to set manufacturers up for success by evaluating them at different points in which they apply to join the network.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say, so you and I both are on this MCC. I love hanging out with you there. We always have kind of, I think, generally similar views, so it's nice to be around folks like that. One of the things that we get a lot is kind of we see the inside of it, and we also see the outside, the public being really unsure about what's going on. And so I wanted to lay out what the responsibilities of the MCC are, because there's a lot of confusion about it, and it is as this kind of decentralized system, even though we are a centralization point, it's very different than what most people are used to. So can you, let's start with walking through what happens when someone wants to make a hotspot.
I'm going to just back up for a minute to the comment you made about being decentralized. I think we are a very sort of loose centralization point, but when we are not your typical, your typical centralization point, which would infer that we are like the rock of authority.
Right.
But the way that the HIP-19 process works, and for those of you who don't know what the HIP-19 process is, when a manufacturer applies to manufacture a hotspot that will meet the Helium standards and can be officially approved to join the network. And a hotspot cannot join, or a manufacturer's product cannot join without being approved. So a manufacturer would start with putting in a proposal. The MCC, which both me and you, Nick, will take a look at, as well as, I think there's 5 other people on the MCC committee, take a look at their proposal and determine if that manufacturer, right from the beginning, before they get started buying supplies, investing a lot of time and money, if their application shows that they are a good fit to join.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so
add to that? Yeah.
No, so let's just pause there. Is that when I first came on the MCC, like my default was, let's say yes to everyone, and let's get people on here and get a manufacturing. And after having seen a couple of the kind of some of what looks like institutional gaming, and certainly in some cases what was institutional gaming, my default is kind of now switching to no, and for the folks who are coming on to make it very clear that they can be of benefit to Helium.
Right. If you aren't joining to contribute to an actual network, if your focus is on mining and getting money over contributing to the network, ultimately that would kill the network if we don't have enough people contributing to it. So I'd say at the base, that is what we're evaluating these applications for. We want manufacturers who genuinely want to be a part of growing the network.
Yeah, yeah. I'm seeing Jerome is asking, how does the MCC currently view the addition of multi-mining containers to the hotspots? I think, Sophie, we've been talking about this a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think I wrote somewhere that I think it's a pretty interesting marketing tool to add, say, Grafana, which is not a mining, as a secondary mining,
Yep.
but like to add all these other apps
Yep.
and tools to a miner. I mean, I personally think it increases the value. As far as we have permitted a couple of different, well, of course, we permitted Deeper Network to join,
Yep.
and then we removed them.
Yep.
And they had two different chains that they were interacting with.
Yeah. Although I think to be
Yeah.
fair, like I don't think that had much to do with it. They had the other chain. I think it was. So I mean,
Right.
Let's see, Neil. I'm going to push this over to you because this is what you talked about a while ago.
Yo.
And you've also been on the POC SWG, the security working group. So you're kind of coming from it from the security side. I'm curious to see where you sit on this thing of like, hey, how should we view people who are kind of doing multi-mining on one machine?
I don't think it's a problem at all. I think we've got a lot of wasted resources. And like, I always go back to that idea with Bitcoin. The idea was to have a node in everyone's houses. Now it's too expensive for everyone to have a node in the house. But we have a decentralized system of over 850 locations. So we should use that. We need to use it for other services. And if they can get benefit from our decentralization, it seems like a perfect match.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I like it. So
And
yeah,
I guess
good.
we just like evaluate secondary mining one case at a time, of course, for security, just to make sure it would be a good fit. I think, yeah, overall, I feel pretty aligned with you, Nick, that this is a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's case by case. Dave, what do you got?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. However, coming from a sort of software systems integration background, I'd be a little concerned about the testing effort required to make sure that the interactions between these different components didn't affect one another, especially if it was if people were going to put some software on their hotspot that meant that they weren't going to be earning the HNT that they ought to be earning,
Right.
because something else is utilizing the resource at the time that they're beaconing or witnessing. So. That would be my only reservation, but yeah, there's plenty of resource available now. We've gone to light, so I think it's a good thing, but it may require a bit more thorough testing and some responsibility back on the hotspot owners for installing other applications, and the caveat that it may affect your HNT earnings.
Yeah.
So I think it's just something to bear in mind.
I think it comes back to like, if you're running a 1 gig Nebra, it might not be a good idea to run multiple software on there. But if you're running an 8 gig rack, it makes perfect sense to do everything. I mean, Rack were talking about upgrade kits for 5G at Helium House. That sounds immense.
Yes.
Like, you utilize all those extra resources. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I'm seeing all the comments about never mind Rack doing extra stuff. When's it going to get a dashboard?
I think they said something about the app coming out today, didn't they? So their maker app's coming soon, at least, or in beta. So should be most of it. And they committed to saying that remote diagnostics is totally needed. So hopefully they'll be doing something.
Yeah. So if we kind of come back to this MCC thing, because it appears to me to be pretty misunderstood, is that we start by saying, okay, it looks like this manufacturer can produce a hotspot. Looks like they're aligned with the network. And then they send a couple pieces of hardware to committee members. And we, certainly not me, go through those and see if it looks any good. And you were telling me about your very first test that you do.
Yeah, first test is, plug it in and see if we can access it. So we ask the manufacturers to give us a document that explains clearly their security implementation, also their dashboard. We want to see that they're not sending everything with admin password. They may send it to the auditor with admin password, but we don't want them sending it certainly to customers that way. So, that's like the first test, is to make sure that they understand what the expectations are. They send us a document that explains how to use their hotspot. And so that's really the first test. Second test, which I think you're referring to, Nick, is that we'll take it out of the box and shake it. And if it's loose, they have to send two. And the reason they send two is one is taken apart to inspect, and the other is used to do security testing. And we usually hang on to the hotspots for 2 to 3 months, which gives us the opportunity to go back. There are occasionally questions, like what chip is inside of their LoRaWAN card? Are they using I just opened something which I hadn't opened previously. They sent 2 hotspots. One had a SX1302. The other had, to my great surprise, a 1308. So these aren't super crazy critical details to the performance of the hotspot, but we do want to know that manufacturers are honest. They should say what they're sending.
Yeah,
so,
honest and probably competent to do it. That's always the first trigger when I'm looking at their application. As silly as it sounds, like if they're not dotting the I's and crossing the T's, or if they're unclear about any question there, my no vote goes even further to the no side, because I figure how you do anything is how you do everything, kind of piece. But it's difficult because for some of these folks, it appears that English isn't their first language, and that's seems to me unfair to assess them on their ability to speak English.
Yes, 100% agree. And also, this is a global network, and because the current language used is English, we shouldn't be, and I don't think we do ding anybody based on English being their second or third language. We tend to work with manufacturers quite a bit to make sure they understand what they're being asked. But it's pretty universal. If you shake a hotspot, and this has happened a few times, and there's parts coming off, it also seems very likely, although the MCC doesn't get involved with customer service things, which I think we can talk about as well, we don't want them shipping to customers with like the radio card falling off,
right,
or pop falling off, or any other kind of non-good manufacturing process being used.
Neil, I see you smiling. Is there anyone you're thinking of, Neil?
I can't imagine what Neil's thinking about.
just the way the 𝗚𝗵 arrived in bits. That was the only thing. The pie fell out, the radio card had come off, the antenna cable come off, the USB was out and bent, everything. The antenna wasn't fixed on. It's difficult though, right? What you've inspected might not be what comes to the end user, because a lot of the times they're prototypes, right?
No, they are not supposed to send us prototypes. And in fact, we don't audit prototypes. Like, I will look at the case, or the other MCC members will look at the case. And if they're sending something, if the manufacturer sends something that's very clearly 3D printed or hand milled, while we understand that at times their PCB and their, injection molding process, or, whatever process they're using for their case might be at different speeds, we won't audit something that's clearly a prototype. And right. we have certainly just stopped the audit right there, sent it back, or asked for photographs in the case. This happens quite a lot. Yeah. So to Neil's point, we audited that particular hotspot, and it was not in pieces.
Yeah, and I think, I talked to Aaron at Helium House, it must have just 2 days ago. I thought it was pretty cool that he showed up, because I thought there was the potential for folks to kind of come up and just be mean. And I didn't see any of that. I don't know if that happened to him at all. And part of that kind of spoke to like this keyboard warrior stuff, is that everyone is like super tough on the internet, but when you're faced with an actual human, you decide like, okay, maybe it's better to have polite discourse.
Yep.
But when I was talking to him, he had said at the beginning, so this, I'll get the dates maybe wrong. In January of 2020, they were thinking, and maybe even earlier, but he's like, oh yeah, when we first started, we thought if we sold 5,000 units, that was a great success. And they had 90,000 units ordered. And so anything like that, I mean, to anyone watching, I'm sure you're upset with 𝗫𝗏. I don't know anyone who isn't, or very few people who aren't. But just, yeah, you aren't, Dave. Is just think about the challenges that produces, right? Is that if you're, and we can take this back to you being like a little kid mowing lawns. You think that like as a 14-year-old kid, if I got, one lawn is good, 10 lawns are better, and 100 lawns are amazing. At 100 lawns, you start running out of time to mow lawns, and you have to totally change your business. And that's just like mowing lawns as a little kid. Never mind going from 5,000 to 90,000 spots. So no excuse, but definitely an explanation I thought was, it was helpful.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, like the requirements changed since they released those units as well. No one knew that 1 gigabyte RAM wasn't going to be enough to push the chain on, and it changed right the way through their design. So when they come out, they're a bit behind, but it was just forces of the network growing so fast, no one expected it. I think like the goal for last year was like 100K hotspots, wasn't it? And we did close to 800K. So that just goes to show no one thought it would grow this quick.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so sorry, I gotta get us off track here. So they send the hotspot as long as it doesn't look like a prototype and as long as it works, and it looks good, then whoever assesses it puts up a document that for me is always kind of hard to read because it's super like engineering specific. So I'll go through it and basically like look for the greens that indicate everything is good, and then try and understand the reds where it's bad. And then from there, the MCC votes on it, right? The company submits a couple pieces of paperwork and says, hey, we've passed our radio, whatever certifications in our region. And then they're basically allowed to onboard. Is there another step that I'm missing?
No,
okay.
No, that's it. Yeah. But I would say a significant part of what the MCC does, there's 2 people who are members who are radio experts, and we evaluate their radio certifications, which can be really tough because as much as English is our first language, certainly looking at radio certifications from Taiwan or like SRRC certification from China is very difficult. It's very difficult to know really what is going on.
Yeah. Yep.
To put it mildly, I mean, you don't expect a manufacturer to forge a radio certificate. I mean, that feels ridiculous.
Right.
But we can't understand. It's hard to understand what they are.
Yep. Yeah, we got to make sure we understand what's going on so that it doesn't come back and we're like, oh yeah, we totally we totally missed something super major. Okay, so that's how the manufacturer gets a hotspot on board. I want to take not a minute, but a few seconds and just say hey to a bunch of folks who came on. Gray Hat Guy, good to see you here. Falcon Punch, Saab. Tim, always good to see you. I'm psyched, Tim Laws, that I got to meet you. Super cool presentation at Helium House. Thunder Road, I've seen you here a couple times before. 𝗚𝗿𝗀𝗀. So just good to see everybody. Dan Andrade, I always think he is 𝗚𝗿𝗀𝗀, is on here. So yeah, just good to see all the folks who are in Helium and have questions and asking questions. And of course, Russ, also good to see you here. I see your questions about Panther, Russ, and I think we can talk about that, Sophie, probably in terms of what happens to any manufacturer. I don't know how much it's I don't know if the video has been released or not yet, or like what's out there, and I want to be careful about going too far on that. But I think we can talk about what happens when a manufacturer behaves poorly, right? And we can talk about deeper or 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and lay out like the problems with the MCC and the lack of tools that we have to really do a good job of kind of enforcing the security and the health of the network.
And our process, which Neil is like, Neil's committee is the first line of prosecution, so to speak.
Yeah. I'm seeing Anthony, do we vet the team that is behind them? Yeah, they do get, we KYC them, right, Sophie?
We do.
Yep.
We do. And I believe that after this, after we get through Panther, we'll probably potentially make that a little bit more, that's what I'm looking for, more rugged than we have. I mean, the KYC is a regular KYC. We want them to prove who they are, we look at the business license. We want to see who the head or the responsible person of that company is. We look at their passports. We ask them to submit a selfie with the passport. There have been times that we have interviewed them for KYC, like been in the actual factory on video. So we may go back to doing that all the time. But yes, they are KYC.
Okay, and I'm seeing the video is out, great, but the final decision isn't really made yet. And I think this is a pretty good place to talk about those kind of, quote, final decisions or decisions in general. So let's start off with the tools that the MCC has and really that the community has and how it works on the institutional gaming side. And I want to make this separation between institutional gaming, which is kind of, as I think of it, what happens when the manufacturer is pretty clearly in, I don't know, is it collusion? But working with like gamers and providing gamers a giant percentage of their manufactured pieces versus, you know, there's a couple folks on this chat who are busy gaming with their like 5 to 10 to 30 hotspots. And I still don't think that's right, but I'm not really as worried about that as I am about the thousands of hotspots that get onboarded. So Neil, maybe it's good to start with you because you're part of the POC SWG that's brought 2 of these cases. Is how do you assess that? And then Sophie will talk about what we can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of movement recently, so it's been getting a lot easier for us to look at network stats of what's going on. You know, we've got tools now that you can instantly run a check, for example, like of how many hotspots are only witnessing the same maker. Yep. Obviously, these factors change quite a bit. You know, it was released that, you know, that we were looking at hotspots that only witnesses the same manufacturer. Now they kind of change their methods, but the tools are catching up just as fast as the gamers to be able to find them. And when it becomes a certain size issue, we see, you know, manufacturers doing strange things on a huge scale, then we start taking notice and start building a case against them. And we tend to look at a manufacturer and look at things like burn transactions, because it really shows it. There's twice now. COTX did it. 𝗍𝗫 did it, and Panther have both done it now. There's transactions from suspicious gaming wallets to their maker's key. So we try and build a case of evidence against them and then present it to the MCC. I'd like that to change in the future. I think we need to be more proactive with helping the manufacturers see this level of gaming. Some sort of warning system would be nice as well. Yep. But right now, we can only build evidence to stop them. And I think it's the right thing to do for the network. But if we could stop it earlier and help them do better at being network participants, I think that's better. But right now, it's just, 40-something% of Panthers were on the deny list. And there was quite a lot of Panthers out there. So it's a major issue that needed to be stopped. So this was the best course of action to raise an issue with the MCC, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Soph, go for it.
And that's it. So after the POC SWG brings the case to the MCC, we all got together. Is this what you mean, Nick?
Let's walk through kind of how the mechanics of it. So POC SWG brings the case to the MCC. The MCC says, okay, we'll hear it. And then I'm seeing a couple questions in the comments about whether it's public or not. So kind of walk me through, how that works, Soph.
Okay. So the 2 committees and the manufacturer get together and have what is a trial. And that trial is made public. And I think Panther just came out this morning. And the delay has nothing to do with transparency. It's more that sometimes people put on their slides personal information like email addresses and so on, and then it takes a long time to edit that video. So that's it. I think the Panther video is out. Now everyone can look at the trial. And so yes, it is public.
Yep.
It is not public in the sense that we invite the community to join, because obviously that would be really distracting and also a bit unfair to everybody who needs to kind of focus while the trial is going on.
Yep.
So we look at all the evidence. I can't remember the exact order, but the 2 parties have the POC SWG, the security committee, brings a short 5-minute summary. The vendor brings a 5-minute summary of what happened. Then we have a longer period where maybe 20 to 30 minutes where each party brings all the evidence and the defense. There's a 24-hour period or 48-hour period beforehand where everybody has an opportunity to look and think and research the evidence.
Yep.
And then at the end of these larger, it's kind of like Law and Order, where you see these like clumps. It's quite dramatic. Everybody is showing their evidence and then defending their evidence. And at the very end, there's some closing statements. Ideally, it's meant to take 60 minutes. I think in Panther's case, it took 120 minutes, perhaps a little longer than that. The editing certainly was a little long. And then there is a vote. The MCC decides whether or not they are guilty and also what to do about that.
There we go. Yeah. So now here we come to kind of the rub of it, is what to do about it. And I'm seeing a bunch of stuff in the comments, and I know you guys are unsure about what's going on, or some of you are, and you're worried, right? Because you bought a Panther, you bought a device, and this will happen in the future again. And now that device may not be able to be onboarded. So here's the kind of the big elephant in the room is there's only one tool in the MCC's toolbox right now, and I think the four of us, at least three of us, are working on this call, are working to change that along with a bunch of other folks. But the one tool we have right now is to stop manufacturers from adding new hotspots to the network. And if you think of that in terms of institutional gaming, where thousands or hundreds of hotspots are able to be added by a manufacturer who is intent on gaming, that's kind of a reasonable, that's a semi-reasonable way to stop the influx of gaming hotspots. Right now, but it's not a great tool. Like, it's not even close to a great tool. It's like this is the wrong way around, but it's like moving your house with a Porsche 911. Like, you can get it done, but it's a waste of gas and it's a lot of trips and it's a giant pain in the butt. And there's going to be some things that you just can't move. Right? You're not gonna put the grand piano on top of the Porsche and drive that over. So it's not the right tool for the job, but it's the only tool we have right now. And so the way it works right now is that if you have, I think the decision that has been made so far, Sophie, is that we initially decided to suspend the maker key, so to stop Panther from onboarding new hotspots.
Right. Yeah.
But,
while we figure out what to do about the situation for a more permanent option.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'd say, maybe not 100%, because absolution doesn't exist, or absolute stuff doesn't exist in human terms, but we could use some help in figuring this out, right? The folks on the MCC and the folks on this call, I don't know of anyone yet who has presented a solution that is both fair and doable to manage this, right? Because there's a canine alert system. There are definitely, Marvel, come here, you little rotten bug. Come on.
Panther's an interesting case, though, right? Because they're technically 𝗏𝗏𝗀s, though, aren't they? So they could be onboarded via 𝗏𝗏𝗀's key if Panther would have paid 𝗏𝗏𝗀 for the onboarding, for example. So there's always some method that could be used, but
they could
it's
work
about
it
what's
out.
best for the network.
Yeah.
And I think, like, for example, I've told people this. They've asked my opinion. If Panther wanted to come back, then they need to put the effort in to show that they're actually good network participants. Do things like, if they know the manufacturer was gaming, then that manufacturer's hotspot should be put on the deny list straight away. They should prove that they've actually got systems in place to track this kind of thing. Do the work, put the effort in. And I've realised you missed a step on the onboarding. Obviously, your manufacturer signs the ethics document.
That's yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the one thing that says that they shouldn't be gaming and they should be monitoring this network usage, and they're not following along to that, right? So
there is a manufacturer that does that, isn't there, Neil? That they do deny their own hotspots.
Yes, yeah, there are a couple of good manufacturers that really take a lot of effort into anti-gaming, and it's really good to see. And you can see that in numbers by just going to look at how many of their hotspots are in the deny list, which is just great to see. That's proactive management, and it's what's expected.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Are we? Is that information secret? Are they? Is that manufacturer keeping that information on the down low?
I don't know.
Dave or Neil, do you know?
Don't know.
Okay, well, we'll keep it on the DL for now.
But we know, but we just don't want to say just in case,
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was speaking to a couple of guys at Helium House this weekend, and they were like, what can we do about gaming? We are worried that we will be associated with people gaming. And it was at the forefront of their mind. They're looking at submitting proposals soon, and they were on it. And there was another guy there who is producing them, and he said he's fairly confident because they got a small customer base, that he knows what's going on, but that the issue will come when people switch off their hotspots, sell them, and somebody scoops up tens of thousands of them, and implements the same mechanisms in the second user market. So I think it will become more interesting, because I think it will shift away from manufacturers and into people just sucking up all those cheap hotspots that people claim they're going to be on the market soon.
Yeah. So if I'm going to come back to you, but I've seen 𝗍_Helium group asking this question that I think is really important to address is, will you take Panther community input? And I think 𝗍_Helium or 𝗍_Helium, you've also asked, like, hey, can you listen to the Panther community before you make a decision? I can jump on that, Sophie, but I'd like to give you kind of first shot at that.
I feel that all of MCC decisions, like final decisions, should and do happen by a vote. But if I was voting on that, I would say yes.
Yeah, so let's figure out, like, how would we do that? Is that it's pretty, I don't know, maybe it's pretty tough to do that, is because the problem is not with the Panther community of kind of good actors. That's not where the problem is. And so I totally get their position of like, hey, I bought a hotspot. They were really good hotspots. In some cases, I had people come up to me at various meetups and be like, oh my God, the Panthers are my best hotspots. They're crushing. And that's what we want. We want great hotspots on the network that work and do a good job. But the flip side is and this is, I think is really difficult for, I don't know, humans in general, certainly difficult for me, is to imagine that a world exists beyond my own, like my own little world. And that there are, like, let's say you bought 5 or 10 or 20, or you're a baller and you bought 100 Panther hotspots, is that there's, what, 30,000 of them that they produced? I'll get that number wrong. But in any event, it's far more than any one kind of good actor, as far as I know, has. And so right now, the tool we have is to kind of turn the entire water spigot off and just stop the new onboards, or to leave it on and to let the onboards happen. And it's not a good tool, but there's really only one way to use that, I think.
Right. But the question was about, would we take the Panther community input and how we might do that? And I think off the top of my head, I mean, I would not say no to any input, like just people, want to provide input. Of course, the community is very valuable. And perhaps they would do that, just thinking off the top of my head, because of course we can't spend the next, 2 weeks talking to each individual. Perhaps everybody would get together and submit a short statement. But yes, Nick, you're absolutely right. I mean, this statement would be, we are good actors and we have good hotspots. Please don't turn us off. That would be what that would say.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's switch from that right now, because I don't have any good ideas. I haven't seen any good ideas yet that are very clear where it says, hey, this is exactly how to handle this situation so that you protect the good actors and deny the bad actors. I'm sure the solution exists. Go ahead.
I think Neil had a good idea that we could kind of riff on.
Yeah, let's
do it. I don't know if this is a place to talk about it, but Neil mentioned, 𝗚𝗿𝗀, they are connected to Panther as the manufacturer of the Panther hotspots. They have their own maker key. So in a sense, Panther has access, or potentially has access, to 2 maker keys. And I'm not sure how, that seems like a tremendous amount of work to split hotspots into good hotspots and bad hotspots. But I do like the beginnings of this solution.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, because Panther basically explained that 𝗏𝗏 did everything for them software wise. So technically they're 𝗏𝗏s already, so they could flash them and put them on their onboarding server and it would work. So, but it was just a case of, obviously there's $40 of onboarding fee and $10 of location fee that were priced into the sale of the Panther. So Panther could work with 𝗏𝗏 to pay that, and those hotspots could be onboarded. And they could also do things like, like I said earlier, sort the deny list out, so that manufacturer that they said it was gaming is stopped. And if they're not selling to that market with a bit of management and proof that they're actually doing the good work, it could work out for them.
Yep. Two questions then, and the first one will just show my, once again, stunning ignorance. Is that once the hotspot is on a deny list, is it able, or can it come back off, or are we kind of, is it a one-way gate right now?
It's able to come back off. It's just an addition or a removal request. So you can either do that as an issue and wait for someone to come around and clear the issue for you, or if you put the evidence in for a removal, actually show it, not just a photo of a hotspot in the middle of a field with no power cables on it.
Right.
Then someone will pick that up and do it. But you can do it as well, and you can put the PR through that actually updates the deny list, and Helium will just approve it. So, you can appeal the process.
Does CrowdSpot tells you how many times it's been on the deny list, doesn't it? So I think I was looking the other day, and some have been on the deny list like 29, 30 times. So they keep going round this cycle of going on and off the deny list.
Interesting. So I mean, it's good that you can get off of it, but it's obviously not that great if we got some that have been on it for 29 times. I saw Network Bits had asked, Joe had asked, are manufacturers using their own shady distributors? I think that's what 𝗚𝗿𝗀𝗀𝗀 was doing, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same.
But in our ethics doc, and certainly by now, I mean, the ethics doc was relatively new at 𝗚𝗃𝗃, but now it's been around for many months. I mean, manufacturers are responsible for their mass distributors. So it's not for the MCC or the security working group to police who the distributors are. It's for the manufacturers themselves. They need to be confident in that their distributor is not going to be doing institutionalized gaming.
Yeah, super good point, Sophie. Is that the MCC, like I think we say this at the beginning, but like we don't take any joy at that. That's like when I see those calls on the schedule, I'm just like, man, dang it. Right. I'm trying not to curse, but I don't say dang it. And so I think like that's the least fun part of Helium for me is kind of going through that thing and dealing with naughty people doing naughty things. I'd rather be dealing with awesome folks doing radical things. I did see, let's see, Simon M had asked, why don't Helium make an OTA to those miners that have the banned keys with the new software update and keep them online? So this, like, there may be some kind of extra technical pieces to this, but this goes to this kind of the deep point of decentralization, is that the idea is that there's not one company that can just switch your miner on and off. If there was, it'd be a centralized system, which is not what the kind of general Helium community wants. Now, there's going to be some of these points of centralization, but the more we can decentralize, the better. Is there anything that you guys kind of think about that, or that I'm missing on there?
I think you're spot on.
Okay, cool.
It's a difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah. And then Thunder Road, I'm seeing, I guarantee you my Panther X is not cheating. You guys would laugh if you've seen my Panther X earnings. Like, that's the thing, Thunder Road, is that I would guess, in fact, I'd bet $5 that you're not cheating, right? Because I'd be willing to lose $5, and B, it seems like a safe bet. But it's not you that's the problem. It's the manufacturer in this case that is the problem. And so this is the part of decentralization that is really difficult for folks to understand. And once you kind of wrap your head around it, then you know who to go after. And in this case, the folks to go after are the manufacturers who are participating in this gaming, the same as it was with 𝗚𝗃𝗃, although not as many people are going to get hurt with the 𝗚𝗃𝗃 stuff, because 𝗚𝗃𝗃, did 99% of their hotspots were not sold to individuals. But if we get a manufacturer, and it, not necessarily Panther, it could be, anyone, where 50% of their hotspots they produce are cheating and 50% are going to regular people, like we need a better tool. We need better tools in the toolbox is the deal, is we don't have the right tools to handle that right now.
I'm sure we will get there, though, and fast.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about, let's go kind of back to this general idea of a HIP we're thinking about, is using what we've learned so far about all the public information on the blockchain. So nothing like secret, no black box stuff, is saying, okay, as Neil had said, hey, if we are starting to see a manufacturer with a ton of manufacturer to manufacturer with transactions. Like if it only witnesses and beacons to other spots, like that's one thing that is kind of suspicious. If it always has a perfect scale and it's always deployed kind of perfectly, that's kind of suspicious. If there's, what was the other thing, Neil, that you guys have brought as far as evidence?
Same make a witness, no DC transfer, no data transfer as well. That's another one.
So we're
RSSI and SNR.
Yeah, and then you can look at the IP address for reputation as well.
Yep.
Location, sorry.
Yep. Yeah, so I think those things are what I'm seeing as being a reasonable way to stop this way earlier. Instead of waiting until we have 30,000 or 20,000 or 10,000 or even 500 hotspots on a network that are pretty clearly gaming, as we say, okay, as soon as a percentage or whatever the numbers are, and Dave, that's kind of on you as the statistician, and Evan and Neil to kind of look at those actual numbers and figure out what that looks like, is we just stop the whole thing a lot earlier and don't let it go this far.
I think an awful lot of work has been done over the last few months in taking sort of the idea of, well, this looks a little bit like it might be gaming, and developing those tools. There's all sorts of different tools now, so it's not one thing that will put a manufacturer or a cheater in the spotlight. It's a combination of things, and the likelihood grows the more of the boxes you tick. So you wouldn't necessarily, because previously there have been some that were earning 12 HNT per day when everybody else was earning 0.2, and there was clearly something happening there, but it needed more tools around it than just, well, it looks a bit like they're earning too much. Because as we know, you can still earn, maybe not 12 HNT, you can still earn significantly above the average. But if you then start looking at the RSSI and signal noise ratio and other things and other things and other things, it all starts to build a picture. And then you can say, right, yeah, this is exactly what's going on here. And with so many people looking at it, it can be spotted a lot earlier.
Yeah. Sophi, I'd love talking. I could talk all day, but I want to give you a chance. Is there anything that you've got on this? I'm seeing a couple cool comments to address.
Go ahead, bring the comments.
Sure. So Webmonger is saying LOS, line of sight, is also a good measure. I think that's a great idea. And then Matt J has got this thing, it's going to be hard. That's each thing we implement will just change how they game. And it's probably better to not say everything you use to prove gamers. So Matt, this is this thing, I kind of agree with you, kind of disagree, where there's this transparency piece to the whole thing, where everybody should be able to look and see, like, how is the network being done, right? If we have one actor acting unilaterally to protect the network, as we saw last November, the community was pissed about that. Even though I thought that was 100% the right thing to do, and I would suggest those guys do it again if it was the same thing. I know the community was really upset when Nova had their own internal deny list. So to that point, Matt, I think what I think of this, or how I think of this, is there are some basic things that are so obviously egregious that you have to put in like these giant filter pieces to stop the obvious gaming. And then it just gets dialed down more and more and more. So it just gets harder and harder to game. And this will always be a cat and mouse thing. As long as there's profit on the table, there will be crooked people trying to take that profit for themselves. So it's kind of a constant thing to figure out. But I think at this point, it's probably pretty good to say, and I like Webmonger's idea of line of sight, like, hey, if your hotspot is only witnessing other manufacturers and it's got a perfect scale and it is has perfect RSSI and it doesn't have line of sight to the other hotspots, and what was the other thing? There's one other thing. It's not transferring any data. Man, that's like I don't know, I'm going to make this up, like 80 to 90% likelihood that your hotspot's a cheating hotspot.
Right, and we don't necessarily, there's no value in sharing the exact algorithms used to, determine who is gaming and who is not. Like these big picture ideas that you just, said, Nick, all of those things, I think are obvious. And we just don't need to share any more detail. I don't have access personally to the, exactly what the security group is using, but I don't think we need to know.
Yeah.
See, I'd be scared to let something like this loose on the network. I mean, we could stop all gaming right now if we just looked at those tools and just told it to go and blacklist everyone. That could be done, but at the end of the day, they're black boxes, and then they're not. That's a centralized decision. And I think that kind of pushes to hit 40 that if we do see a metric that's really easy to tell that there's gaming, for example, say Maker Witness or small cluster witnessing like CrowdSpot can show, a deny list provider can just choose that as a metric and choose to do a deny list. And if the community supports it, then the validators can obviously use that deny list. But yeah, I think these deny lists are going to change over time as well. So not only will we have better monitoring of it, there are also ways to stop it automatically coming as well in a decentralized way.
We put up a new HIP just last week, Thursday or Friday, while everyone was at consensus. A new HIP went up. And it'll be interesting to see what the community thinks about it. It's a token lockup HIP.
Oh, the token lockup went live. Cool.
That went live. And yeah, and everybody on the MCC worked on it. So it's a group effort. And that is, so the manufacturer needs to put up some HMT against each and every hotspot that they onboard. And they risk, so in Panther's case, if Panther had 60% of their hotspots are bad actors, they would lose all the money that they had put up, or all the HMT that they had put up for each and every hotspot. And it would be enough HMT that it would be more than what those hotspots earned by gaming. But that's
ideally
how it's theory. Yeah.
Yep. But it's a tough thing for the manufacturer. So we also think on the manufacturer side is I want manufacturers to not have a giant barrier to entry, and I want a small manufacturer to be able to come in. So there's this kind of constant balance between what we're doing to protect the network. Let's hit this last thing because we got just a couple minutes left, and I think it's important. Is 𝗚𝗿𝗶𝘀𝘁 and hacking this and that are talking about when a maker maker key has been pulled. So like happened to Deeper and currently Panther's kind of suspended, is they don't have any incentive to keep their existing deployments up to date. And so how does this happen? And you guys have talked about maybe 𝗏𝗏 takes over for Panther, but that's kind of a workaround. Is how do you see, I guess, the Helium community dealing with this in the future? Are we going to allow like a one
token lock for sure? Token lock makes so much sense because that fund could be used to onboard them or manage them on another system, or for another manufacturer to take on that for them. But I mean, in the long sense, like I think community firmware is a good idea, and it does work. There, you can put it on an 𝗍𝗶𝘀, you can put it on most of them. It gets a bit difficult with some hotspots, but community firmware is definitely something I'd like. I mean, I'm waiting personally for HIP 22 with the DIY concentrators so we can build our own.
Right.
I think that's when the community firmware really come together. But right now there is a decent DIY community that will help you get your hotspot on the latest version on a DIY script rather than, say, Panther stops supporting them now. You could go and install that DIY script. But it's just young at this stage.
Yeah.
It's small.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, the decentralization and the centralization part of this. Because even with community firmware, there's only going to be a small group of people who are going to be able to, who have the skills and the interest to manage, and the time really to manage that kind of load. Because the community firmware isn't going to just work 100% of the time, all the time, on every hotspot, on every OS, and so on. It's just not. And then you are looking at like 3 or 4 people who are sort of centralized then.
Yeah. And then how do you control you control what goes on it then?
That's a really good question.
If you've got 3 people that are completely outside of the community that are servicing tens of thousands of hotspots that are no longer supported by a manufacturer, how do the users know what firmware they're installing? Because 99% of them will just want a running hotspot. They won't care what the firmware is. They won't care that it's got any security flaws in it, for example.
Yeah, there was a big security flaw with the DIY firmware the other day. They were using standard Pi login details and then flashing them. So they were getting attacked by botnets just logging in as Pi because they left their password as default, So you have to be really careful with it.
I thought Raspberry Pis themselves have a security built in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to put a script on the, don't you have to put an extra script on there to enable.
I don't. I think SSH was open on them from the Ansible script that people were installing, but they were just leaving the default password as pi and whatever the password is default. So botnets were just going in and installing software, running cron jobs and everything. It's quite crazy to see, but that was a user security issue. It wasn't, the DIY Ansible. It's just the person didn't install it very well.
Right. I'm seeing a bunch of stuff in the comments on kind of ideas on what to do, and I wanted to really briefly go through the HIP process in kind of 30 seconds or less, just so folks get this idea. Is that Sophie? People are asking what HIP it was. It looks like it might have been HIP 41. Don't quote me on that. I'm just reading off the comments, but it's not like what's that?
The token lockup. You
Token
mean what
lockup,
number?
yeah.
No, it's much further along. It's like HIP 69. It just went in Thursday, so it's the latest HIP 69 maybe. Yeah,
right. And then to write that HIP, I mean, it's not like you had any double secret probation key, or they're like, hey, are you on, the Helium team? It was just people putting together a HIP and you put it in. It's pretty straightforward on how to do it. And if you need any help on it, you can reach out to me and I'll point you to the people who can help you with it. But it's just using GitHub. Like, it's not crazy.
Going through this exercise, it was the first time I did anything with the HIP. And there's a template that gives you sections to fill out. So it does, if your thoughts are not organized while you're trying to figure out what you want to propose, that application or that proposal, the HIP proposal, will organize it for you.
Yep. And you just look at other HIPs and see what's going on. And yeah, the one that we've been putting together, it's been really nice to look at. I think HIP 15 and 17, be like, oh, here's how you do it. Is like you have the summary, and then you have this explanation, and then the problems, and all the rest of it. So I guess the takeaway there for those of you who are watching this, who have good ideas and who have the expertise and have the technical capabilities, write a HIP, put it out there. You'll get help from the community and help make the whole thing better. It's if we just leave it to a couple people, then it's not as good as it could be. It's the more brain power we get against it, the better.
And remember, we're all part of committees that are volunteer, MCC, POP security working group. People can join these things if they want to come and help us. And if you don't like gaming, come and be a part of the solution. There's only a very few amount of people that are actually, there's two groups mostly that are doing all the work on the deny list. They're very secretive because they've had death threats. But, there's only two groups that are managing this deny list at the moment. So the more people that want to help, become part of the solution to this would be amazing, Anything's welcome. Come and talk ideas. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Love it. Well, I think we're pretty close to the end. Is there so we got 3 minutes to talk about Helium House.
Yeah.
But I think the stuff with the MCC and really kind of the anti-gaming at the institutional level is probably more important than Helium House. I thought it was really good to meet all these people in the flesh. I had so many people walk up and they would say their name and I'd be like, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. And then they say their Discord handle. They're like, oh, what's up, homie? So it's good to meet folks. And then they hinted around, and maybe they put it out there, but there's going to be a Helium House in New York in September. Something else. So Sophie, that'll be close to you. You can just pop on the train or the bus or whatever. And cruise down.
My wife's already looking at hotels.
Okay.
Me too. I'm definitely coming to this one.
Get your passport, Neil.
Yeah. So and maybe Lee and I will just get a bigger place this time because we didn't get one the last time, and at the last minute we had like 6 people like, oh yeah, I am coming. Have you got room left? I'm like, no, I don't. But we'll do another live show there. It would be super fun. But it was good to meet people. And then the other thing that I thought we were gonna have like a giant announcement, and I was like, I'm like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna go on? And nothing really happened. It's just like, hey, everything is pretty normal. We're crushing along. I thought the biggest piece that came out for me that was interesting is that there are a bunch of bigger groups working on using the network, and they're just not talking about it, whether they don't have a marketing team or they don't care about YouTube or whatever. But there are large companies. Goodyear was one of them, where I didn't know that they even knew that helium existed. And they're like, oh yeah, we're putting sensors in all the Goodyear tires. And so it's pretty cool to see how much use this network is going to get. And going back to something that I think we've all banged on about forever is that it may not see, as you kind of look around without doing deep research right now, that many people are using helium. But my takeaway from Helium House is that there are some massive companies and massive usage coming down the pipe.
It may not be here today, but it's going to be soon. And the guy from Goodyear he summed it up, saying that you can monitor an entire car's tires, so four tires for a year for 35 cents using the Helium network, and that's unrivaled anywhere else.
You just can't do it on other networks. That's the whole point of it, isn't it? You just, even buying the SIM cards and some sort of contract, you just can't just turn on the device and be charged 35 cents a year from it. It's a whole new ball game for them, It's just unbelievable. And you think how many cars are out there that run Goodyear tires. It's just, that's a hell of a market,
Yeah, it's a good time to figure out sensors. I know I get this question all the time, like what sensor should I start with or what should I do? Is I've got a little guide on LHT65. There's plenty of guides on using mappers. There's all kinds of stuff out there, but you can get anything, any simple sensor, put it on the network, figure it out now, and you'll be way ahead of what most people are willing to do. You can see behind Sophi, she's obviously pretty hardware centric.
If you get to watch any section of the Helium House, look at the guy with the chocolate farm and the work that he's done, because it's all really, really simple stuff, providing high value to his customers, and it's the sort of level that anybody can get involved with. He went through some of the challenges that he'd had, but at the end of the day, the sensing that he's doing is quite simple for them. Get involved.
Very cool. So thanks a ton for coming on and walking us through that. It's always good to see you and hang out with you and get some of your knowledge. Anything to leave us with? Any kind of takeaways for folks who watching this?
I think join the MCC. We could definitely use the help, and I think, can we post a link to apply to join?
Yeah, I'll put that in the description. That's a good call.
Yep.
Yeah, because we just brought in a new member, right?
Yep.
Like,
so if you have experience in hardware, RF, general manufacturing, technical marketing, messaging, I realize Nick has that all sewed up, but if you, I was joking.
Yeah, thank you. I was like, definitely not sewn up.
A member of the community that really just wants to help out evaluating manufacturers and have some of these skills that are, very security and hardware centric, RF centric. Please join.
Yeah,
please. We need more people. We need more people everywhere. It's so surprising. People always go to me, why don't Helium do more PR? It's like, they need more people. We all need more people to help spread this and just take part. Just join in, please.
Cool. Dig it. And I think all the notes that 619 is dropping in, the links, track pack, and Helium Analytics should be in the description on this YouTube video. I'll edit the link to apply for the MCC. I saw a couple of our 𝗚𝗿𝗀𝗀 crew are on here. Kevin, that was super good to meet you. And Russ, was good to meet you. If you guys want more of this kind of content, I meet once a week with the 𝗚𝗀𝗀 crew tomorrow, Tuesdays at 10 o'clock. And we'll talk about this stuff, like helium-centric stuff, as well as other projects. So always love to have folks on. That's a paid thing. It's right now $49 a month. It's going to go to $149 pretty soon. But for right now, it's pretty cheap. And jump on in. We have experts coming on to talk about all this stuff and keep you in the loop. Okay. Anything else? We good? We're over by like a couple minutes. Sorry to burn the extra 3 minutes of your day, Dave. I know you're wanting to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Cool. That'll do it. And he's gone. Ripping. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week or on Twitter or on Discord or whatever. Rock on.
Bye.
Bye.